is going on, members of the J Area? My name is Jose Ramos Jr. Welcome back to another episode of the J Area podcast, and quite a few things to talk about on this episode. Obviously, we're going to get to the aftermath that followed AEW WrestleDream. We have a bunch to talk about in regards to Roman Reigns and the Bloodline Saga. And obviously, that's what we're going to talk about here first. I mean, it's the biggest story in professional wrestling to this date. I mean, you look at 2020, when the initial storyline had begun, when Roman Reigns made his huge return at SummerSlam 2020. Who would have thought that from all the way from then, we'd still be talking about that storyline, this saga, 4 years later? And what I really appreciate when it comes to this story is that every detail matters. You can't just keep the story progressing forward all willy-nilly without any logic. Actions have consequences. You look at the story of Roman Reigns and how he was initially just a mere member of the Shield. You see, he wasn't intended to be when I say the focal point of the group, I don't necessarily mean that he wasn't supposed to be a star. But you didn't have him speak a lot on promos. He wasn't trusted to do, the long-term work within a match. You had Seth Rollins, you had Jon Moxley, then known as Dean Ambrose, and Roman Reigns was the great power guy. He was the strength, he was the muscle. He gave you the hot tag. He gave you all these intangibles that would lead you to believe that he was a star along the likes of like a Dave Bautista, of like a Goldberg, just a physical presence in the ring. But then once he broke away from the Shield, once it was time for that story to end, that's when it became clear that the WWE was hell bent on pushing him right to the moon, that he would be the next top guy, along the likes of like a Stone Cold Steve Austin, a John Cena. He was supposed to be the face of the company. But see, this was around the time that a certain undersized star, a technical wizard in Daniel Bryan, now known as Bryan Danielson, who we'll get to later in the show, he was climbing up the ranks. He was becoming very popular amongst WWE fans and just pro wrestling fans in general. So there was a sense of rejection towards Roman Reigns. He was the chosen one, but he wasn't our chosen one. He was supposed to be the next star, but he wasn't our next star. Thus beginning a love-hate relationship between the fans and Roman Reigns. Doing nothing wrong, listening to the orders, following the stories that were given to him, the promos that were given to him. And God, there were a bunch of bad promos back then. And for better or for worse, Roman Reigns began to sink. Although he would improve in the ring, his presence might have gotten a little bit better. It was the reception with the audience that just couldn't get over the hump. Look at the Royal Rumble in 2015. That was supposed to be a huge moment for Roman Reigns. That was one of those moments in one's career that pushes them to the next level. Shawn Michaels in 95, 96, Stone Cold 97, 98. When guys win the Royal Rumble, that is the first indicator that we were on the path to the next great legacy. But the fans weren't having it. They booed him out the building. They had The Rock come out. Keep in mind, this is January of 2015. They had The Rock come out and help his family member in Roman Reigns fend off heels like Kane, like The Big Show. And even then, with The Rock's endorsement, the fans rejected both of them. It wouldn't be for quite some time until the fans would eventually accept Roman Reigns as a star. Hell, one could argue, and it might be a hot topic, one could argue it wouldn't be until he announced his remission from leukemia that fans started to finally accept Roman Reigns. Now, first of all, it's a shame that it has to come to that point, But one can argue that. He became stale, quite frankly. And again, no fault of his own. It was just the way he was presented. The character of Roman Reigns, in a nutshell, is one of the more polarizing figures in the last decade, easily. It wouldn't be until, like I said, 2020, the return at SummerSlam, that he finally turns heel, something the fans, myself included, clamored for. Because if it's not working on one end, why don't you flip the switch and try it the other way? Some of the greatest stars in this industry have started off as heels. Stone Cold Steve Austin, one of the top selling merchandise leaders of all time, was a heel coming into the WWE. John Cena got over as a heel when he was the doctor of Thuganomics. You'll even look at Hulk Hogan, who before, reaching Hulkamania, was a heel, working the gimmick. The Rock, keep it in the family. Came in as a babyface, was booed out the building for being too stale, too boring. He was a good guy, like the cleanest good guy you can get. No edge to him. They turned him heel. And that's what helped skyrocket him to the moon. So they do it with Roman Reigns. And this begins the Bloodline storyline. His first opponent, Jey Uso. A member of his own family. Wanting to be a part of the ride, but yet was disrespected by Roman Reigns from day one. There's a moment in the back that I very much remember vividly when it's Jimmy, Jay, Paul Heyman, and Roman Reigns. And he's talking to them. Obviously, Roman Reigns is calling the play, and he refers to Jay as Jimmy. And Jay looks at him like, no, I'm Jay. I'm not Jimmy. And Roman says, does it even matter? Roman's whole ideology was that when you look at me, when people come out to see me, they know who I am. I'm the tribal chief. I'm the head of the table. I'm the provider. When they see you, they ask, which one are you again? And I feel like that stung. That stays with you. Jay certainly did not forget that. Over time, we would see more dissension, more separation between Jey Uso and his cousin Roman Reigns. And this obviously will fast forward, and it leads to the ending of their unity in the Bloodline. Jey, of course, would leave the Bloodline. He would head over to Raw, become one of the top baby faces on the red brand, leading a movement, with one word. Winning the Intercontinental Championship, being the guy to introduce the beautiful new version of the title. And although it's a small, change, it's tremendous. I love it. And now that Roman Reigns is back, and he's fighting the very bloodline that he helped elevate on this roster, now spearheaded by his cousin, by the younger brother of the Usos, Solo Sikoa, who has brought in a dangerous trio in the form of Tama Tonga, Tanga Loa, and Jacob Fatu. 3 individuals that Paul Heyman, the wise man to Roman Reigns, knew this was a threat, that this was not the plan. So much so that they would attack Paul Heyman, putting him through the announce table in Madison Square Garden. They attacked Jimmy Uso on the SmackDown following WrestleMania, putting him on the shelf for half the year. We finally see Jimmy Uso make his return at the Bad Blood event. And on this past week's SmackDown, he tells Roman Reigns, we need help. We can't do this alone. And obviously, the crowd begins to rumble. We feel the energy. We feel the momentum. The crowd. Everyone wants it. Jey Uso, Jimmy Uso, Roman Reigns. The original Bloodline. The crowd's on their feet. They're chanting yeet. And Roman Reigns looks at his cousin, and all it takes is two words. But in those two words, memories begin to flash. Memories like the Hell in a Cell match between Jay and Roman. Memories like when Jay had that impassioned promo against Roman where he says, I hate you. Memories of when Jay super kicked Roman Reigns, saying he was out. And in those two words, he says, no yeet. Roman Reigns is not ready to allow Jey Uso back into the fold. And I think that's such a fantastic approach when it comes to Roman. The easy way out would have been like, yeah, we need help. Call your brother. But Roman Reigns, if anything, has not changed who he was in the past 4 years. He stayed consistent. Some people want to say he's a babyface now. I would like to think he's still Roman Reigns. You could argue he's still the heel. It's just his attention is on other heels. But in Roman Reigns' mind, he's in the right. Jay betrayed us. He left the family. He thinks he's better than us. He wanted to be out so badly. Let him be on Raw. Don't bring him over here. We don't need him over here. You and I are holding it down, Jimmy. But Jimmy, of course, that's his brother. And although they fought at WrestleMania 40, brothers will fight. But at the end of the day, they're still brothers. Roman Reigns needs to come to peace with this. That they need Jay. And the word need is so crucial when it comes to this storyline. When we go to the beginning, Roman Reigns claimed that the family needed him to provide food on the table. They looked to him for leadership, for guidance, as an example for the bloodline. The Usos needed Roman Reigns to reestablish themselves as one of, if not the best tag team in WWE history. The WWE Universe, in Roman Reigns' mind, needed him. He was the needle mover. He was operating on God mode. But now that the tribal chief does not have a tribe to be a chief of, he is in need of some help. He has Jimmy. In order to complete that original 3, he needs Jay. He needs Jay. But how ironic is it that Roman, Jimmy, no championships, nothing to their name. No Ula Fala, no Universal Championship, no Tag Team Championship, nothing. Yet you look over on Raw, Jey Uso's the Intercontinental Champion. He's on top of the world. Again, like I said, one of the top baby faces on that brand. One of the top baby faces in the sport. He doesn't need them. Jay's doing just fine. He does not need Roman. He doesn't need Jimmy. They need him. So it's all about how are we going to get these 3 men on the same page. And I think the answer is Paul Heyman. Paul Heyman is the wise man to Roman Reigns. He's remained loyal to him for the last few years. He wants this to work. And if Paul Heyman is of common sense, he's going to want revenge against the men who took him out. Solo, Tama Tonga, Tangaloa, Jacob, Fatu. He understands, Paul Heyman understands, that as they're currently constructed, they can't take them on. 4-on-2? No. Cody Rhodes is done with the Bloodline for the time being. He has his hands full with Kevin Owens, and that's another story. So they need to go back to their roots. I can see Paul Heyman, whether it's with or without the OTC, or Jimmy, heading over to Raw, wanting to speak to Jay, and Jay wants nothing to do with them. I told you I'm out. I don't want to be there. I don't need to be there. You need me. I don't need you. And I can't wait for a segment like that where Jay is in the in the back or in the ring with Paul Heyman. Jay is one of the more entertaining wrestlers on that roster. But when he becomes serious, when you saw his promo with Braun Breaker leading into the Intercontinental Championship match, you felt something. When it was serious, that's where the money's at. That's where the real cinema is at. And maybe he dejects Paul Heyman. Maybe he doesn't want to deal with it. But you know who's the one man who I think has proven to be one of the top baby faces? Sami Zayn. Sami Zayn, for better or for worse, has always had a knack for connecting with the WWE audience because we find him genuine. We want to see part of ourselves in Sami Zayn. And one of the best qualities in Sami Zayn is his ability to see the best in people. When Jey Uso went over to Raw, and guys like Drew McIntyre were so anti Jey Uso, who was the guy that stuck up for him? Who was the guy that said, no, give him a chance? It was Sami. Sami, the same guy who trusted Kevin Owens after all they've been through. After all the attacks, after all the betrayals, after all the matches, he still found trust and belief in his friend to the point where they won the tag titles at WrestleMania 39. Sami Zayn is of the purest of the pure baby faces. Don't be surprised if Paul Heyman and Sami Zayn get together. Now, I don't mean like as in a partnership, but indirectly are able to persuade, convince Jey Uso, hey, even if it's for the one time, let's help them. I don't think this leads to a full-blown reunion, Bloodline's back. For the sake of Jay and his growth as a single star, I'm thinking it's a one-off. The wise man came to me, Sami came to me to help you. I'll do it. But he's going to need a level of an apology, acknowledgement from Roman Reigns. I could see him and Jimmy making peace. They're brothers. But he and Roman Reigns, that's where it runs deep. They got to reconcile their differences. And I do think inevitably it will be War Games. The new Bloodline. The Tongans. Jacob Fatu. Solo Sikoa. Up against the OG Bloodline. Roman Reigns. Both Usos. And Sami Zayn. That's the matchup we want to see. Again, there's that argument about Cody Rhodes. He has his own deal with Kevin Owens and Randy Orton, who's now caught in the middle. It has to be the OG Bloodline and the new Bloodline. Still a developing storyline week to week, obviously. We are going on the road to Crown Jewel. And that's the PLE that is up next. But let's talk about the pay-per-view that just ended. All Elite Wrestling, WrestleDream. AEW has been in the headlines, for the last month. Whether it was the issues with the Lucha Brothers, whether it's the issues about Ricky Starks and his disappearance and what he's doing or not doing in All Elite Wrestling. Whether it was the television deal with Warner Brothers Discovery. Whether it's the Jimmy Jacobs and the creative direction that Tony Khan is taking with his promotion. But again, we'll keep it on the surface. We'll talk about the ongoing stories that came out of WrestleDream. Obviously, if you haven't seen the post-show reaction to WrestleDream, I highly advise you to go check that out, where I share my initial thoughts in regards to the main event and other high-profile matches that had taken place in Tacoma, Washington this past weekend. But if you are listening to this episode, then you already know how the pay-per-view concluded. Bryan Danielson, the AEW World Champion, unsuccessful in his fight against Jon Moxley. Moxley, now a 4-time World Champion in All Elite Wrestling. His main goal was to rectify, realign, basically fix the company that he joined. And if he had to defeat one of his closest friends, then so be it. And it was a great match. It was one of the two best matches of that night. The other being the three-way between Ospreay, Takeshita, and Ricochet. But if you wanted story, if you wanted real depth and meaning, the main event is for you. And that's been a complaint. Even something that I've mentioned is that the AEW brand needs a little bit more direction when it comes to its storytelling, certainly long term. The main event gave me that. I was satisfied with it. You saw the story of basically the attack. Jon Moxley was the aggressor. His goal was to choke out Bryan Danielson by any means, whether it was with his own hands, whether it was with the cables from the cameras, the interference from Marina Shafir. It didn't matter. He needed to save AEW. And he would do so. He would deliver a pile driver to Bryan Danielson after he spit in Moxley's face in defiance. And then he would put him to sleep. And for good. Because now Bryan Danielson's full-time career is over. And in order to talk about that, let's go on a little segue here. There's been so much emphasis on his full-time career being ended. When you're putting so much emphasis on that, that leads me to believe he's coming back. And it makes sense. He's going to have to fight Moxley again, right? But if you ask me, I say don't. Danielson has done everything that he needed to do in his career. He has solidified himself as one of the all-time greatest technicians, one of the all-time greatest pro wrestlers. He doesn't need to come back. Allow him that opportunity to enjoy his time off with his family. He's earned that much. He deserves that much. And so for the notion that he's always coming back as a part-timer, it's like it negates the level of emotion, the investment in what had happened, what followed that surprising loss. Surprising for some because I predicted it. I said he was going to lose at WrestleDream in Washington, his home state. Of course, I got the opponent wrong. Should have been Darby. But it's that level of drama. So if we're already in the mindset of, well, his full-time career is over, he's coming back as a part-timer, it's deflating. It really is. For his sake, for his health, I hope Bryan doesn't come back. As an in-ring competitor, he can come back whenever he wants, and deliver a promo, maybe accompany someone to the ring. But in terms of in-ring, Bryan's good. He doesn't need to do it no more. He's set. He's set, in my opinion. What followed after his defeat, of course, Moxley and the BCC, the Blackpool Combat Club members, including Pac, Claudio, and eventually Wheeler Yuta, who delivered a knee to Darby Allin, who was wielding a chair. I don't think he's a heel. I've seen initial fans and their thoughts. They're thinking, "Oh, he turned heel." It's like, he looked like he hesitated, or not hesitated, but he looked like he had remorse, I should say, afterwards. He didn't seem like he was 100% all in. He kind of pushed away Jon Moxley at times, where he was trying to pat him on the back, and he just, wasn't receptive to it. Wheeler Yuta very much, I think, is in that sense where it's like, I don't have anybody else. Bryan's gone. This is all I have. I'm stuck. I'm held hostage. He's a trios champion with Claudio and with Pac. He knows no one else. This is his family, for better or for worse. But of course, they would attack Bryan and Darby Allin. They would tape him to the ropes and force him to watch as Jon Moxley and Wheeler Yuta, well, really Wheeler Yuta, had to suffocate him on the orders of Jon Moxley. This would lead, of course, to a band of baby faces that included Jeff Jarrett, Hook, Daniel Garcia, Private Party, Orange Cassidy. I believe Adam Cole was there as well, if I'm not mistaken. And I think it's clear where we're heading with this. And I'm excited for it. I will say this ending to the pay per view has gotten me invested in Moxley as the champion. I know some people are a little bit, anti Moxley at the moment. They think, oh, yet again, he has a championship reign. Hey, if it's for the greater good and it makes sense, I'm all for it. I'm willing to wait and see where we go with it. And right now, what it seems like is we're developing the next big bad, the next group that should be the focal point of AEW television. Jon Moxley holding, metaphorically and literally, the AEW World Championship hostage. They stuffed it in a duffel bag as if it was some kind of bank heist. It is the mission of Jon Moxley to restore order and prestige in All Elite Wrestling, to the point where he got a lot of the OGs, guys like Danny Garcia, Darby Allin, Hook, Orange Cassidy, got them on the same page, forcing them to step up. Your guy Bryan Danielson's gone. We got rid of him. Who's going to step up? Who's going to be the man? I think he feeds off that. Moxley isn't the kind of guy where he wants all the power. He wants to have an opponent that is worthy of challenging him, therefore forcing their hand. That last shot of Darby Allin in shock that he could not save Bryan Danielson, with Orange Cassidy by his side, with Garcia and Hook by his side, I don't think it was by accident. I'm hoping it wasn't, and if it was, let's capitalize on it. Let's capitalize on it. Let's have this new core of baby faces step up. They were a part of that AEW core that was killing it during the pandemic. Those years of 2019 to 2021. They were there. They were there before guys like CM Punk, guys like Bryan Danielson, Swerve Strickland. They were there before them. Force their hand and step up. The BCC is looking like the next big bad. And I'm hoping it works out better than the Undisputed Kingdom, because that fell off quick. And we'll get to the whole MJF Adam Cole situation. We'll get to that. I saw a comparison online where people were like, hey, Darby Allin is the guy. He has lost that championship opportunity to Moxley, so he's going to want to come after Moxley and that world title. He is the Sting to their NWO. And it might be a tired, used example, but if there was an appropriate time, this is it. He was the protege to the icon Sting. And now we have a group of badasses like Moxley, Claudio, Pac, Wheeler Yuta for the most part, who I think is, again, he's hesitant. I think eventually we will see him turn. And I'm forgetting Marina Shafir. He is going to be that leader of this group of misfits, and I'm all for it. The parallels are there. The parallels are there. And I'm looking forward to it. I'm hoping they do capitalize on it. Some people were sour on the ending of the pay-per-view. I mean, in terms of business, it's smart because it left them on a cliffhanger. You want more. You want to come back and see what's going to happen. We now have something we can sink our teeth into. People clamor, myself included, people clamor for better storylines. This is it. This is the perfect situation that AEW has found themselves in. I do also want to point out, I did see another point that the Shield and Bryan, man, the connection there. The last match that Bryan Danielson had on Monday Night Raw, Seth Rollins. The last match he had on SmackDown, Roman Reigns. The last match in his full-time career, Jon Moxley, who he had hand selected. Apparently, hand selected as the individual that he wanted to lose to and put over. What a guy. Bryan Danielson in his last matchup put over a huge heel stable who now had momentum, but now they have more momentum to build off of. He put over one of his best friends in Jon Moxley, and he also gave the rub to Darby Allin and a group of baby faces who will now be tasked in defeating the heels, which is another point. AEW has nothing but heel champions. Their world champion, Jon Moxley. Their trios champion, the BCC. The tag champions, the Young Bucks. The TNT champion, Jack Perry. Continental champion, Okada. The women's champion, Mariah May. Mercedes is the TBS champion. The international champion, Takeshita. Nothing but heels. To use a Star Wars reference, at the end of A New Hope, we were left with hope, and that was all in. Bryan Danielson wins the championship. We're in a new era for AEW. Boom, he loses, he's out. The heels win, and they decimate the hero Empire. And now, and now, we await for the baby faces to regroup and to defeat evil. Look at Infinity War. Spoiler alert, but Thanos wins. And in Endgame, they come back together, they regroup to win. In order to enjoy the big wins, the successes, the excitement, the happiness, the joy, you gotta deal with the fall, with the pain, the suffering. This is what they needed. AEW has the ball in their hands. Now they gotta run with it. Now they gotta do something with it. Because you already saw what they did with MJF and Adam Cole. They had something going there when it was Adam Cole, MJF. They had a whole year, a great year, an entertaining year, to the point where they turned MJF into a babyface, which I didn't see coming. I thought he was going to be a heel forever. I thought he was great as a heel, and he became this babyface that we actually liked. They had their matchup at All In, and we thought there was going to be a heel turn. There wasn't. There wasn't. Adam Cole suffered injury after injury that derailed that storyline, and it's no one's fault. I mean, injuries happen. You have the turn at World's End where he reveals himself to be the devil, and the Undisputed Kingdom is developed, and they cost MJF the World Championship, and then he takes time off. Adam Cole has time off, although he's in a wheelchair, helping out Wardlow, who hasn't been seen in months, and then Roderick Strong, Matt Taven, and Mike Bennett are doing God knows what, and it's just all over the place, and it just derailed. They lost focus, and it derailed, and it's a shame because I was invested from beginning, and then once we got to about Full Gear and World's End, it started shaking, and the wheels started to come off of the car until eventually MJF returns. He's a babyface. He then becomes a heel. Thankfully, he's a better heel than a babyface. And now the roles are reversed. Adam Cole is the babyface. MJF is the heel. He chases MJF off, which I thought was an interesting choice because Adam Cole cost him the world championship. MJF is running away from Adam Cole. It's a little convoluted. I think for their sake, let's just reboot it like a soft reboot. We can acknowledge there's history, but we can't get too, deep into it. Otherwise, we're gonna get tangled in the webs, and it'll just be a headache. But that's what they did. They created that mess, and now it is their responsibility to untangle the weave of webs that they created. There's something there because we were invested in it to begin with. But because of how it derailed, it might be a little difficult to get on board. But I'm willing to give them the benefit of the doubt. I'm willing to give them that chance. So long as they don't screw it up. I'm invested in the Moxley and Darby Allin stuff going on, so I'll be tuning in for that. That's gonna be a key. But if you can have other storylines here off to the side, Will Ospreay and the Don Callis family, that's another one I'm interested in. Hook and whoever attacked Taz, please let's figure out something there because Hook defeats Chris Jericho, and I don't know. I really want them to do well. because I think it's so important. It is crucial to have competition in pro wrestling. You don't want to be stuck with just one promotion. We had that for 20 years. And look what happened to the WWE. As soon as the WWE had competition in AEW, they began to improve. Because competition is crucial. The old saying is iron sharpens iron. That's the only way you're going to get better, is through competition. AEW Dynamite should be a hell of a show, ideally, if they capitalize on it. Monday Night Raw, SmackDown, NXT, everything's just... I personally think everything is firing on all cylinders. AEW, a little shaky, but again, they have something here, so long as they don't screw it up. But of course, that's why we watch the shows. We watch the shows to keep up to date, like you guys watch this podcast, and I appreciate that, of course. If you guys enjoyed the podcast, make sure to give it a like. Comment down below your thoughts and opinions on AEW, WrestleDream, as well as the lead to Crown Jewel, the saga that never ends in the Bloodline. And of course, subscribe to the channel to keep up to date with all the pro wrestling content, such as the post-show reactions, the episodes of the podcast, and all the good fun that happens here on the YouTube channel. Of course, my name is Jose Ramos Jr. Thank you again for joining me on today's episode. I'll see you next time.